Good evening and welcome, everyone. Another interesting episode of Tete at Suvi's Power Meet with none other than yours truly, Dr. Suhani Mendonça. And today, I'm in fact extremely elated because I have Mr. Vinod Daniel with me. So let us all give him a big round of applause and give him a warm welcome. welcome, Vinod Daniel to my show, Tete at Suvi's Power Meet. So without much ado, I'd like to introduce you formally. If I have your permission, please may I start?
Thank you so much, Suhani, for inviting me to your show and for talking to me.
Thank you. Okay, so Vinod Daniel, as we know, is the chairman of the AusHeritage, that is Australia's International Cultural Heritage Network. He is also the board member of the International Council of Museums. He's the CEO of India Visions Institute, which is an Indian-based trust assisting with vision care, and he's the CEO of Daniel Aspect. Mr. Vinod Daniel has worked on projects in over 60 countries and has a strong background and interest in the world of museums. A most rounded international personality, an IIT Delhi alumnus, a chemical engineer, and as we know, he's involved in the world of museums and the heritage, and now, of course, eye care and optometry. So we'd really like to know more about, your childhood, your family, and your siblings, and how did that impact, your life forward?
Again, thanks, Suhani, for this opportunity to chat about a whole range of things, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. Look, I mean, I had a very typical childhood, like many people who grow up in India. I was born in the deep south of Tamil Nadu. But most of my life I spent in Chennai. I mean, nearly all my schooling life. So I had an excellent family, my father, mother, my brother and a sister. And we lived in one of those inner city areas. Those times we had a lot more space to do things compared to, how inner city Chennai is at this stage. At that time, our routines were quite regular. We all, used to go to school. I mean, education was a priority, and I guess that is also part of many Indian families. And we used to play a bit of sport in the evening, and then catch up with family, and it was great.
Right.
In terms of, I guess, the biggest influences that happened during that time was, I think at that point I was quite fortunate to go to a particular high school that really challenged me. And I think, in many ways, it was a Madras Christian college school. At that stage, there were not too many high schools. I mean, right now, there are so many different high schools. And there was a very strong group of kids around who I went to school with. They challenged me quite a lot. I had a very strong interest in science and mathematics. And we used to compete quite strongly with each other. It was not because somebody wanted me to study, but it was because I was quite keen. And also having this group, it kind of took you, one level up. That whole group did really well, in the final year school. So I guess it's quite important to have that kind of a group that can challenge you, motivate you, and take you.
Absolutely. It's so required, to, I think, be surrounded with such kind of people. I guess that's how you can really move forward in leaps and bounds. So, I just wanted to know what about your days in IIT Delhi? Tell us
Right.
something, your bonding and your learnings.
Yeah. Look, I mean, growing up in Chennai, my whole world was very much Chennai and Tamil Nadu. I didn't know anything beyond this. It just happened that I was quite fascinated with going to IIT. I mean, I definitely
Yes,
wanted to do
of course.
engineering, and I thought I'll just give it a go and try the IIT entrance exam. What really helped me in that exam was my strong interest in science and mathematics, and I was surprised that I got into IIT. I mean, really speaking, I didn't expect to get into IIT. Actually, to be honest, I mean, what basically happened is when the results came out in the newspaper, I didn't even wake up that morning to see what the results were. I was fast asleep when a bunch of my friends who all knew
Right,
my number, they came, knocked on the
right.
door, and then suddenly you realize
Yeah.
you got this seat in IIT, which was great. It was a great feeling. But then
Right, right.
then there was a big decision I made at that stage. I mean, it's much more because I was quite keen to explore. I could
Hmm.
have probably put my hand up and said I'll go to IIT Chennai because my rank was
Right.
such that I could have taken chemical engineering in IIT Chennai, but I picked IIT Delhi out of
Okay.
Chennai. It was just that I was fascinated with going somewhere, and I thought, look, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a safe environment to go. Anywhere you go to stay in a hostel, it doesn't matter where, whether it's Chennai or
Right.
Delhi. So
Right.
that's what kind of took me to Delhi.
Mm.
Once I went to Delhi, one thing I can say is it's not that easy for a Tamilian who didn't know Hindi, who was smart,
Yes,
to go to
I can
Delhi
understand.
and settle down. So, the first 6 months, I learned a lot of really valuable life lessons that's
Ah,
taken me places.
right.
If I had not done that move, I don't think I could have done much in the global arena, because
Right.
this one kind of taught me the whole thing on culture, living across cultures, to be
Yes.
tough and resilient, to
Yes.
understand where people are coming from, and
Yes.
not knowing any Hindi at all. I go there, and those days we had what we call as ragging or hazing, and those seniors come talk to me, and the first thing they did was, because I didn't know any Hindi, they
Yeah.
taught me 20 bad words in Hindi. So any senior I met after that, my job was to repeat those 20 words. And then, that was very much the first step.
Oh
But,
my God. Yeah.
look, I mean, look, I learned a lot of things. I learned what it is to live with different people,
Right.
cultures. But one of
Right.
the great things in IIT is, more than the education, more than anything, it's the kids who are there. They are all, very motivated. They are all very aspirational. You can sit down and debate, in your steps at 11 in the night about any issue that happens in the world. So
Wow.
whether it's about Fidel Castro, or whether it's about the oil price somewhere, about a particular war, in Israel, they would have views. Even
Right.
if they didn't know much, they would have very strong views that you got to compete with. There was a whole
Right.
bunch of logic and other things. So I think that was great. And
Right.
till this day, one of the biggest benefits I have is those days that taught you how to, kind of cope, manage differences, to basically to be quite competitive in what you do, to use logic in many different ways, and also probably in a great way. The alumni from IIT Delhi is great. We still
Right.
keep in touch,
Oh,
and
lovely.
yeah, so we had a big reunion last December, and and
Okay.
and basically in a reunion was quite nostalgic to go and sit in the same room where I first sat in. When we all get in, the director gives one of those big pep talks where he gets all
Right.
those kids to come in.
Right.
You're kind of so scared, and it's in a strange land, and he says, look, you're the cream of the country and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
we just sitting there this many years later, and just
Right.
remember those days. What was a great experience. It did teach me a lot of life skills. Education
Right.
was good, but more than education, I think it's that all-rounded view you have. I think
Right.
that's one of the best things. So,
Extremely interesting, Vinod, to know all what you went through. and and yes, as you mentioned, being a part of the IIT family, IIT alumnus, the cream only gets through. I mean, because the entrance exams is so extremely tough. And it's amazing that you're a part of it and all. But tell me one thing. It really amazes me that an IITian and whose love for museums. So when did that shift happen? Because engineering to museum and museums, when we talk about museums, normally people would always see museums as historical, museums as architecture, museums as that's how you would relate to museums with. So how come it happened to you?
yeah.
And
No,
one more thing, sorry to add to it. And then, how did you get into Getty Museum in LA? Yeah,
sure. Yeah. So, Swani, before I come to that, let me just make one more comment on the previous thing, which is,
sure.
I mean, I was quite, maybe fortunately I got into IIT, but I meet a lot of successful people wherever I go.
Mhm.
But one thing I realize is not everybody is from IIT. Probably a very small minority is from IIT. I meet people from all colleges in India. And I think all colleges, all universities provide that opportunity. It's up to you to take it and get challenged by it and see what you can pick. Say, for example, in Australia, I know this guy who is one of the best known Indians within the business fraternity, within the political fraternity, and he's a graduate of Lala College in Chennai,
Right, right,
right?
right,
And it's great. I mean, you just look at what he's achieved and what he's done. So I don't think IITs
right,
are a need. IIT is it's an opportunity. Similarly,
right.
everybody needs to really go and use that opportunity. Now, when it comes to museums, look, I mean, I got to be honest. I like museums. I like art, but I'm not one of those real art buffs. So I'm not a person who will go and probably be craving to see, the latest contemporary painting or whatever. My interest actually came very much from the science part in terms of how science can help art.
Ah, okay,
So
okay.
it's very much in terms of how art deteriorates with time. What can
Right,
you do in terms of maintaining, preserving it, right? How do you display it? I also was quite keen in terms of how do you interact with the audience when it comes to art, the science behind doing that, understanding audiences, evaluating what they want. So I came from that perspective. So once
right,
I
right.
graduated, after this, I went and did my master's in the US and I was looking for jobs. So there was
Mm.
this interesting job that came up at the Getty where they wanted a chemical engineer
Uh-huh.
to come and work for them to do research on how to better preserve collections. And I thought, look, that was interesting. I mean, it's not a job I would ever dreamt of taking. I could have worked in
Yeah,
a oil refinery or a rubber factory or wherever it is. So I
right,
just applied and they interviewed me and they took me. And I think usually in life, there are certain things that happen which changes the way you go in life. And this is one of them. I mean, I think you
super.
got to put your hand up when it
Right,
comes. You kind of evaluate, take that opportunity, and your whole
right,
direction changes. So from being a pure technical person, it was to apply technical aspects in preservation.
right.
But once I got in there, I
Mm.
really enjoyed the museum world. It's a world where I won't call it pure science, what people do in universities where they do a lot of
Right,
research. It's more science management. Where,
right,
to give you example, one of the first projects I worked on was there was a mummy from Egypt. They were quite
right.
keen to understand, how you could preserve the mummy so that it
Mm.
can survive for a long time. And
Mm.
that's when the whole emphasis was on trying to understand why do they deteriorate and
Right.
what can you do to minimize the deterioration. There's nothing in life or in a museum that you can keep forever, but you can extend the life expectancy of a collection. And in this particular case, one of the biggest issues is the bacteria that would eat up and destroy the mummy with time. So the key idea was to decrease the oxygen levels to a low level so that the bacteria doesn't survive. So that's the science part. So you kind of pick the science part, then you come up with a solution on what could happen. So like that, I happened to work on a whole range of different projects where you can, understand the science, then look at solutions. But the most exciting thing for me working within that sphere was what you do had such a big impact around the world. And in early days, when I started working on a number of projects, I kind of realized that whatever I was publishing, whatever I was writing, whatever I was speaking, there was a lot of interest. And I also enjoyed communicating. And so I could probably translate that into a form that people could understand easily and apply. And so that's where my museum career really started. I started doing much more of scientific work, research in conservation, research in preservation. And I was doing a lot of traveling and speaking. And before I realized, I was actually traveling quite a bit, speaking at major events and conferences, and one thing led to the other. So that was very much my days there. And then during that time is when, I was there at the Getty in Los Angeles for about 4 years, where the opportunity where one of the people from Australia who had just finished up his role at the Australian Museum came down back to Los Angeles, and he was lecturing on a particular event with me. So he asked, Vinod, there is an opportunity there. Would you like to try? And I was fascinated. I wanted to go and explore one more part of the world. I was young and full of energy and I'm still young, but I was young. So I did put my hand up, and I went there. So I think again the key takeaway lesson would be, look, I think you've got to just push boundaries a little bit. You got to try, and then put your hand up. And I would think in most cases it will work. Even if it doesn't work, you'll be happy that you tried it and you put your hand up. So never sit back and exploring. I know you got to be cautious and all that kind of stuff. So in all these things, it doesn't matter which part of the world you want to go to. So you do. So that was very much my journey, to the US. To the Getty, and then from the Getty to Australia.
Okay, very, very awe-inspiring and absolutely path-breaking, Vinod. Because from an engineer to the world of museums, that's absolutely fantastic. So tell me, when did you, make the move to Australia? When did you move to Australia and start living out there?
Yeah, see, look, I moved to Australia in mid-90s when there was this opportunity. And part of my interest also is I wanted to actually work a bit more with Asia. So I knew the Australian Museum had a lot of collections and interest in this part of the world. And plus also career-wise, it was a good opportunity in terms of taking a higher role. And so that's what, took me there. So then I was at the Australian Museum for, quite a bit of time. I was there for nearly 16 years. And I progressed. I was much more into management, but it gave me a lot of opportunities. So during that time, I worked in probably every Pacific country, right from countries we would have never heard of, before, including New Guinea and, Palau and, in Samoa, Tonga, all through there. Then I worked quite a bit in Asia. And I had a very strong interest for India. So I was trying to do a lot of collaborative things with India during that time. And that's also kept me in the loop in terms of the international museum movement. And International Council of Museums is the peak body for museums. It's got about 45,000 members, from about 140 countries. So I got more and more active. And so, it's one thing led to the other. And so I'm quite involved with ICOM. I'm on the board. But at the same time, I have a very strong interest in the global museum arena in terms of, where museums move. It's not, all museums are not like, the British Museum or the Met. 90% of them are very, very small museums. I would say even 95%. So it's important that whatever happens in museums is applicable across the spectrum.
Yes, that's there. That's really, really amazing, Vinod. It's really great to know that. But I really wanted to know from you. You have worked in so many various projects where at various museums are concerned, So, which is the project which really intrigued you, intrigued your interest and you really, really enjoyed working on? And something which, it is remained with you.
Yeah, look, I think it's a hard question because there are some projects where you're fascinated with the place.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful, and you want to do something, and the impact might not be that high, but you love making a small difference. Say, for example, I
Yeah.
worked a bit in Laos, in Luang Prabang, and I worked in Bagan, and we can. In Myanmar, those projects are
Wow.
good. So you do that. But I think in terms of impact, see, one of the projects that's had the biggest impact has been, this is early on, one of my early projects. I spent maybe 5 or 6 years, but that's kind of become the best practice thing for museums. It's a very simple issue. Museums have a lot of materials that get eaten by insects. Whether you have paper, whether you have wood, whether you have leather, whatever, they get eaten by insects.
Yeah, the
They were using
termites.
they were using a lot of chemicals.
Mhm.
What can you do without chemicals? Because you don't want to put your priceless painting and spray chemicals all over it, or you have a particular manuscript from 1600, signed by one of the Mughal emperors. You
Ah,
don't want you don't
yeah.
want to spray something on it. So I worked on that, and we came up with a new system where instead of spraying something, we'll put that in an environment, again remove all the oxygen and suffocate the insects to die. So that technology
Oh,
then became a best practice arrangement. We call them anoxia. And very, soon after that, museums around the world started implementing it. So all you would
wow.
do is, air has got 20% oxygen, 80% nitrogen.
Oxygen. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
if you can remove the oxygen just by using more nitrogen, which is a non-toxic gas,
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
insects can't survive. And like humans, they need oxygen to
Yeah.
breathe. So if I can do something to make sure the oxygen is gone and
Right.
have enough time, it'll kill all stages of all insect. But that one had the greatest impact. So not to bore your audiences, but again, that
Yeah.
was a technical
No.
bit. A lot of other things that are not. But the fascinating things are sometimes you get to go, and there'll be very small projects where they might ask you, look, this is the inner part of this fantastic monument, how many
Right.
visitors can come in before the humidity goes up high. So that could be a
Right.
small project locally there, but it's a big, impactful project for that particular institution. So, there's a whole range of
Absolutely.
things. So,
Wow, this is like absolutely path-breaking, and it was amazing, very, very informative, because most people would not even know about this at all. So awesome, Vinod. Tell us, you know, how did you get in touch with the late Professor Brien Holden, the legend, and how did you get involved into the IK industry?
yeah, look, I've been with the museum sphere for a long time. I've worked extensively around the world, and a lot of ministers come for openings, and so I got to know quite a lot of the Australian ministers quite well.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
the Australian Foreign Affairs Minister at that stage was Mr. Alexander Downer. So he recommended, and he got me into one of the boards within Foreign Affairs and Trade that deals
Right.
especially on relationship with India. It's called the Australia
Mhm.
India. So I was on the board for 6 years. And Professor
Mhm.
Brian Holden also was appointed to the board. So I was
Okay.
appointed because of my cultural heritage expertise. He was appointed for his vision care science
Hmm.
expertise, and
Mhm.
we got along very well. And he was a big man, larger than life. He had
Yes.
he was a clear thinker but had a good sense of humor. We used to travel to India quite regularly, so I used to wear my heritage hat and he used to wear his vision care hat. He was just a celebrity. And then
Right.
he was very good friends with Dr. G.N. Rao, who was the chairman of LV Prasad Eye Institute. And so I got to meet both of them. I had a lot of respect for what they have done,
Right.
Dr. G.N. Rao with L.V. Prasad and what they've done across India, and with Brien Holden, what he's done globally. But then
Right.
they had one strong passion. Brien was actually doing a lot for projects around the world. I mean, his principle was simple. His principle was do best quality research, come up with products, commercialize it, part of the profits, put that into humanitarian things, the rest put it back into research. Now,
Yes.
part of the humanitarian things he was doing across the world, and he wanted to do something with India. So that's very much how India Vision Institute was established. It was very much Brien and Nag who suggested that over 100 million or 10 crore Indians need access to a pair of glasses, but don't have it. So it's good
Yes.
to know, your husband Vivek Mendonca is also doing a lot in that space. So I also met Vivek early on during my
Right.
trips
Right.
to India. So
Right.
that is how we met. And then
Right.
I thought I also wanted to do something pro bono in my
Right.
life on the social side. I mean, I was working professionally in the museum side, and
Mm-hmm.
then Brian was quite keen that I help in establishing this and lead it.
Yeah.
And so that's how India Vision Institute was established. And we've done, quite a bit over the last, 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
We've reached probably more
Yeah.
than 500,000 people, so
Yeah.
far.
So you're wearing the heritage hat, you're wearing the global eye care hat, and you're doing so much. It's
See, I think,
absolutely.
as you know, I need more hats. I don't have as much hair as you.
Your sense of humor is amazing. So this just gets me to you travel a lot. It's amazing the amount you travel, and you get to meet so many people, and you're connected with so many people, and so many associations you're a part of, and I know you have various, like a varied, interesting network of people that you are connected with. So how do you manage, with so many contacts? How do you manage to you keep up with them? Keep up with all these friends and associations and this collection of contacts you have, and the networks that you have. So how do you do that? Tell us.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not sure whether there's a simple answer, but I do enjoy cultures, and I had this opportunity to travel quite a lot over the last 4 months. Like everybody else, you're kind of stuck in one place, because of this pandemic. But I used to travel. I used to do about 25 international round trips a year, and maybe
Wow.
about 25 domestic round trips a year. So all because of various projects and various board meetings and other things. Now, I meet a lot of people, and one of the things I always enjoy is I enjoy, listening and learning a little bit on people, what drives them. I don't think I've ever actually met somebody for the sake of a network, because I know that a lot of cards get given to you when you go for meetings, and after a bit of time, I don't even know who that person is. Right?
Right.
I mean, that's
Right.
what happens. You got this pile of cards, but when you meet people and you talk to them, and there is some connection, then that connection can really, be something where it's a win-win. They also want a particular connect in something, but sometimes even if it doesn't go anywhere in a professional sense, the knowledge you gain, what drives people is great. I mean, for example, I'm a big fan of this big A380, so I love going to, the Emirates used to have a bar, and then you just stand there and have drinks. And typically I would talk to a lot of people, and you meet
Yeah.
fantastic people. I mean, there's a time where I met this girl. I mean, she was in her early 60s, and all she did was, she was retired now, but
Right.
every year she runs 4 marathons in 4 different countries, and that's what she does. She travels there, runs that, and the rest of the time she does a whole range of other things. And
Right.
you kind of listen, and similarly you'll meet ministers, you'll meet bureaucrats. But I mean, my advice to people who really want to network is, don't be in a hurry to build your networks, because I see a lot of people going and grabbing cards and doing this. It doesn't go anywhere far. Take your
Right.
time and build a connect with that person. And sometimes you can get a card But if there's a fit, slowly build that. I mean, people need to
Yeah.
probably get to know each other and trust and work
Yes.
things out. And over
Yes.
years, over a period of 10, 15 years, you probably would have built enough. So rather
Yes.
than being in a hurry in my first week itself to show, look, I've got 450 cards, it doesn't go to.
Right, right, right. I think building relationships is so important,
Yeah,
rather
yeah.
than just, it's all about building relationships, and that's what helps you, and it takes you forward.
Yeah, it's two ways. So it's not
Yeah,
that you want something from the other person. The
yeah,
other person
yeah,
also needs to feel that
yeah.
there is something they can get from you, or they
Get from
enjoy
you.
that
Yeah,
relationship.
yeah,
So without
yeah.
that, it won't work.
It
If
will
it's
not
all
work.
they might not even take your calls or whatever, but you kind of realize that you get the message. So it's a
Yeah.
two-way thing, and I think you got to give time, and automatically it just happens with time. So.
So, I mean, so much of traveling that you do. I mean, how do you look after your health? Because it's quite a bit. From one flight to the other flight, from one airport to the other airport, from one city to another country. How do you manage that?
Look, I mean, I think the principle is simple. If you enjoy doing it, it's good to do. If you
Right,
don't enjoy it, you got to stop. So if you're
right,
forced, to do that travel, I think you'll get sick right away. It's like anything else.
right,
It's more like, it's like a mental health issue or whatever.
right,
If you're forced to it, then you hate it, and then it gets into you. So
right,
I do enjoy, the travel bit, enjoy the meeting people, enjoy
right,
the experiences and all that. But then at the
right,
same time, physically too, you got to have a reasonable sense of fitness. So
right.
typically, I spend at least an hour a day on exercises. So I think it's quite important.
Oh wow,
So
that's
yeah, so I think you got to, because it's good for your head too, because sometimes the jet lag and all that. Once you exercise and all, your sleep patterns are better. Then I think also the food bit. I mean, you got to eat well, but you got to also balance it in a way that your stomach needs to know. It gets confused on when it's day, when it's night. So
nice.
it's that. But after a bit of time, how things work. And the very final thing I typically do is, I mean, when I say come from a place where there's a big time difference, I take a
Right.
power nap. I take a power nap of 15 minutes, but I don't lie in bed. I'll sit in a sofa, because if I lie in bed, I will not wake up. So I just sit there, because you get a bit uncomfortable after 15 minutes and you get up. So
Right.
I find that also really helps. So these are just a few things.
Little things.
But then wherever
So,
you go, then as soon as you go, you just get used to the local time and just do things normally. So
yeah. I guess it's all about the discipline. Once you discipline yourself, and
right.
that, as you said, that you work out, you exercise an hour every day, and you're particular about it, you're particular about your sleep pattern, I think then there's nothing better than that. It's just
Right.
all about the discipline. So
So
that's
you,
great.
you enjoy what you do, and
You
I
do,
think
yeah,
because that
yeah,
mental bit is quite important too. See, if you
yes,
don't enjoy it, then it's a stress. If you
yes.
enjoy, I know a lot of people who go to work, they hate it, and that's such a mental stress. So if you love
Yeah.
what you're doing, automatically
Yeah.
those things happen. So
So this gets me to a section where I really want to ask you. Have you dealt with any kind of celebrities? Uh, I mean, it's okay if you want to answer. You please go ahead and answer. If you don't want to, also it's also fine. But it was just my curiosity. I just wanted to ask you. Have you ever dealt with any kind of celebrities where your museums is concerned? Where
yeah,
they
look,
wanted to keep any of their stuff, their
yeah,
artworks, or uh,
yeah.
you know, or a sports person, wanted to keep,
Yeah.
look after his. Yes, yes. Please tell us.
Look, I mean, I think, in the kind of work I do, you do meet a
Mm.
lot of celebrities, including,
Yeah.
people in the sports arena, in the movie arena, you know, the political people. So you do meet. I mean, I've worked quite closely with a lot of political people, but the good part is, I think, in the kind of work I do, whether it's museums or in public
Mm.
health, in the vision part,
Mhm.
with the political people, they know that I'm there for this reason, and so everybody I've met, irrespective of which political party they are in, have been, extremely positive and supportive. It doesn't matter which country, whether it's,
Super.
in the Pacific Islands, whether it's in Australia. There are times where I remember there was a time when, the small island of Vanuatu, the whole cabinet had come down to the Australian Museum where I was there, and they were sitting in my office room and having a chat. And so that's great. I mean, here I had an opportunity to spend quite a bit of time with Sachin Tendulkar, trying to
Oh,
just
lovely.
to chat a bit about, all the cricket bats and balls, all is the
Yeah.
one he made centuries in. And
Right.
and one of my pleasant memories was, I think, this was when Kate Blanchett became a trustee of the Australian Museum. So
Wow.
I was the person who had to spend 3 hours with her, taking her around the museum and show her the various things. So it's a very painful exercise, but I was very happy to do that. So so there is, yeah, and
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
a long time back, I remember, early on when I was at the Getty, I got a
Yeah.
call from someone, and he took me to Charlie Sheen's home in Malibu,
Wow.
and to
Wow.
look at all his baseball collections. And so that,
Right.
I can spend about 45 minutes to an hour with him there. And but
Oh,
all
awesome.
nice experiences. So, I can't,
Right.
I mean,
That's a whole lot of them. That's great. That's
yeah,
awesome. So a bit of a different question. Many saints across the world, their their bodies last for 200 or 300 years. Oh, I mean, what is the reason for that?
sorry, you mean the saints, you mean? Or
Saints, yes, yes. Like how in Goa we have.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Look, I mean, maybe some of the Catholics might not like what I say. I think Saint Francis Xavier was an
yeah,
accident
that's
mummification.
right.
So I mean, my theory is, I don't think, it's like what people think, but I think his people were trying to destroy his body, but in the process they dried it. So, as when you mummify things, what you typically do is you take the inner organs off,
Organs, yes,
because they
yes,
degrade off, and the
yes.
next process you do is you dry it. In this particular case, they dried it because they put that in a solution just to get rid of the body, but then
Mhm.
it was returned. But in the process, the body became very dry. Same thing that happens when you have the Iceman and a whole range of other things. So the degradation is there, but right now the body is definitely degrading. And I did have a chance to go and be there. And I mean, if any of the listeners know the Archbishop, I think we should, there should be certain, you know, measures taken, so that because of the
Right,
humidity and a whole range of other things,
right,
I
right,
think it's important there should be certain measures taken,
right.
because they all have a bit of a life expectancy.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
And sometimes, actually, if you sit back and think, where these mummies, the Egyptian mummies are, how in those days, they used to actually, remove all the organs and put them into salt. I think they used to use a lot of salt. I'd seen it in one of the documentaries. I don't know whether, how far it is.
yeah. No, they used to put in a solution called natron.
Yeah,
See, the issue was more because they could have control over everything but death. They were very scared of death. So they wanted to do something to make sure they in case they come back to life, they got the body. And that's the reason why they'll bury the body
right.
with a range of things that they use, right
Yeah,
from, there's been cases where a boat has been buried along with them, their
right.
jewelry. Sometimes I've heard that even some of the people who work with them, they're also killed and buried around there. So it could
Right,
be a whole range of things, but
right.
the key driver was the fear of death. So I think, and then they did have the technology, which I think is commendable. And
Yes.
in the technology, it's an expensive process. The richer you are, better the mummification
Better
is.
for him, yes.
Yeah. So that's part of the reason why a lot of the pharaohs and all that,
Yeah.
they're well mummified. So it's I think that's how.
Yeah, that's great. So, tell us something about your family, Vinod.
Yeah.
wife and your lovely children. That's
Yeah. Look,
what are they into? And
yeah. So, I mean, my family, they live in Sydney. So I'm married to Shanti. So she is also from Chennai, and
Mhm.
and we all. I mean, she moved with me to the US and then came to Sydney, and
Was it an arranged marriage, Vinod?
well, we it was an arranged marriage, but we used to live very close to each other in terms of the suburb where we lived,
Right,
right?
right.
And then again, see, I think with the kind of lifestyle I have, I think she has been the anchor in terms of making sure when the kids were
Yeah,
growing up, there was a lot of stability and all that stuff. Then
yeah.
I've got two kids. My son Jonathan, he's just finished his law and he's practicing law in Sydney. And my daughter, she's also doing law and media, and she's doing a little bit
Okay.
of modeling there too. So she's
Oh
just
wow.
between the two. But
Yeah.
the kids were grown, they were born there, they grew up there. So, but
Right,
we have just taken a big move where we are
right,
spending more time in India. I mean, I think
right.
my wife is back in Sydney because of this pandemic, just to look after home there and the kids. But
Yeah.
otherwise, I think we're going to, use India more as a base. She's got a very strong passion for stray dogs, so
Okay.
that's
Lovely.
that's what she
Yeah,
focuses on
yeah.
quite a bit when she's here, and
Okay.
I've got a passion for a number of things. So
Yeah.
that changes.
Yes. Vinod Daniel wears that many hats. Innumerable. Well, we have a question from the audience. We've just got time for one question. And Ravi Shivram has asked you, when are you going to write a book?
I I think it'll be good to write a book. It'll be good to do something. Maybe the next phase I've got to sit down and start writing.
Right,
It's just
right.
that I do a lot of opinion pieces and those kind of things with the media,
Mhm,
but I should do
mhm.
something more substantial. But I think it all needs time, and some people are good writers. I enjoy talking more, so I think it'll be good to do something in a written form.
Okay, we've got one more question for you, Vinod. Just recently, I met this amazing young calligrapher who's made calligraphy her profession, and how beautifully she's doing it. And just got talking to her. Her name is Sanjana Chatlani. And so often when you go to museums, you see a lot of titling which is done in calligraphy, and it's beautifully done. Sometimes that's not maintained. So is there anywhere that where such young people can come in and they can collaborate, and or they can come and probably meet you online, and probably you could connect them to somebody? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, is she from India or is she
Yeah,
from
Mumbai. She's from Mumbai. She's from Mumbai.
Mumbai? Look, I mean, the comment I'll make is I think Indian museums are
Mm,
right there for a big revival. I think the whole
right.
museum movement, if this pandemic had not happened, I think right now there would be so much work happening within the museum sector. But right
Right.
now, I think pandemic is going to push things back for a few years. But
Mm-hmm.
but but it's right there. I mean, I think what China did maybe 5 6 years back, they were building 200 to 400 new museums a year. India would have been totally doing that whole museum renewal thing right now. So this whole thing would have pushed it back by a few years.
Right.
She's welcome to contact me, and then
Yes.
I'm happy to connect her. But I think in,
Okay.
in terms of work, especially commercial work, employment possibilities, and all, there is a bright world, out there. But
Okay,
meanwhile,
that's fantastic.
I mean, my advice always is get enough experience outside,
Yes.
look at best practices, look at technology, look at a whole range of things, and then it's easier to apply. So even in my own case, I kind of
Mm,
looked at things globally so much that now for me when I apply, so I always do between what I learn in one sector, I try and apply in the other sector. So it's
right.
always, I think, you need to have that pool of experiences there,
Yes. Yes.
right, which
The,
you
the,
can.
yes. The reason why I specifically took Sanjana's name is because I was really amazed with her. She's actually been in touch with so many penmans, and abroad. There are so many penmans, there are about the top 10 ones, and she's actually learned from one of them. She studied under them, and she's made it into her profession, and she's doing so well. And just in conversation with her, we were talking, and she said that, I mean, working in museums would be something which is, because it's going down in history. It's something very, very big. So I said, I will definitely talk to Vinod sir, because he's going to be my guest on very soon on my talk show, and I shall definitely talk to him. So thank you so much, Vinod. What an amazing chat! What an amazing tete-a-tete we've had. So much to learn, and I think this was not at all enough. You have to come back on my show all over again, because there's so much more to talk to you about. As you wear so many different kinds of hats. And it was great knowing so much about you, Vinod, and it's all the amazing work that you have been doing, and for so many years, whether it's the IK industry, whether it's the museums, I mean, all of it. So it's wonderful to know that. Truly, truly, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the
Yeah,
tete-a-tete with you.
my pleasure. Was great to chat, Suhani, and thank you so much for
Yeah.
inviting me to talk to you.
Anytime, anytime. So we'd like to say a big thank you to all our viewers who have really been supporting us and been there at Tete at Suvi's on a regular basis. And before I go, as I always say, stay safe and be positive. And yes, to all the young ones out there, to all the people out there, if anything is ever bothering you, please don't keep it bottled up within you. Please go and find someone who you can trust, whether it's your inner circle, whether it's a good friend, whether it's somebody from the family. But please do talk to them, because that's going to help you, and it's going to help your health too. So once again, take care, and God bless each and every one. Once again, thank you so much, Vinod Daniel. It's truly a memorable tete-a-tete that we've had today. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
God bless, and bye-bye, everyone.